Hello, my name is Aaron. I'm a member of the club. I've been a member of the National Wizard of Oz Club since 1987, and I'm going to be reading to you from a book I picked up at the first Oz convention I ever went to, which was a Southern. My face is just killing me. Hello, my name is Aaron Almanza. I am a member of the International Wizard of Oz Club, and I have been since 1987. And I'm going to be reading from a book I picked up at my first convention I went to, which was a Southern Winky convention, Dana Point. And it is The Runaway Shadows and Other Stories by L. Frank Baum. These are 6 short stories, which were originally published from 1901 to 1905, though they are a little older than that. The first story, which is The Strange Tale of Nursery Folk. It was dark and quiet in the nursery. Marjorie, tucked up comfortably in bed, was astonished to find that she could see a small figure which had suddenly crept up in front of her. "Why, it's Little Boy Blue!" she exclaimed. "Little Boy Blue, come blow your horn," sang a sweet little voice which she seemed to know somehow. And Little Boy Blue lifted his horn to his lips, but instead of blowing his horn, he began to sing. "Did you ever see a rabbit climb a tree? Did you ever see a lobster ride a flea? Did you ever? No, you never, for they simply couldn't do it, don't you see?" And a gigantic flea, almost as big as a rabbit, jumped lightly up onto the counterplane. A lobster, just a little bit smaller, danced lightly around them in front of him. "Why, they're Father Goose people," cried Marjorie in great surprise. "I wonder if Mr. Jinx is anywhere around." And up upon the bed bounced a fat little jolly figure, which cavorted about oddly and smiling, lifting up his hat. "We're always glad to see his face again," chanted all the animals in chorus, while Little Boy Blue tooted his horn vigorously. An elephant, an ostrich, 2 or 3 geese, a pussycat, and a bumblebee came trooping along together, and Mr. Jinx nodded and smiled and winked in all their directions. Marjorie laughed aloud to see him do this instead of solemnly reviewing the procession, as famous people review the long procession parading in their honor. "Have you ever seen Mr. Jinx? Mr. Jinx, Mr. Jinx? Have you ever seen him when he walks down the street? He nods and then he winks, and most everybody thinks that his smile is really beautiful and sweet." Thus rang all the animal chorus again, as the elephant led the way over the side of the bedcloth, and a funny little dog, a rooster, a donkey, a turtle, and a butterfly followed in a second company, while Mr. Jinx smiled merrily upon all of them. A whale worked himself heavily across Marjorie's feet, then a clown clambered up gaily, and a whole troop of bandits and soldiers followed, heading straight for Mr. Jinx. Old Mr. Micklejohn and the Clockwork Man followed solemnly, Micklejohn taking 3 hippity-hops to one of the Clockwork Man's strides, and a little doll and an ostrich brought up the rear. As they passed out of sight on the other side of the bed, they all turned and saluted Marjorie respectfully. Mr. Jinx waved his hand gaily, turned a somersault after them, and was gone too. Captain Bing stalked pompously from one side of the bed to the other, with a little flock of witches and goblins behind him. And then, from the other side of the bed, there came a strange figure, all tall, pointed cap, broomstick, and long apron. "Mother Goose," Marjorie heard herself whisper. "Oh," she cried happily in a moment later, "here's all the rest of them." And there they all were, for a fact. Jack and Jill, Jack Sprat, Little Bo Peep, Mary quite contrary, and a host of other dear, delightful, unreasonable people that Mary had loved and heard about ever since she could remember anything. The little pig that went to the market was followed by all the other little pigs who stayed home and had roast beef and things, and they all got really quite a deal of confusion among all of them on the small little bed. Mother Goose began to threaten them with her broomstick, and old Mother Hubbard's dog chased them around all about. And then, all in one moment, Marjorie never really knew what happened. All of the Father Goose people were up on the bed, too. And such a time that was had. The first thing Marjorie knew was they were all running around and shouting madly, and still nobody came from downstairs. And then, just as Marjorie began to laugh so hard that she nearly choked, Father Goose and Mother Goose met in the middle of the pretty blue pattern of the counterplace and began to dance a minuet. Marjorie knew it was a minuet because she had learned to dance at one at dancing school. And then, out of breath and rosy, both Father and Mother Goose stopped dancing and solemnly shook hands. They were still holding hands when they walked right up to Marjorie's chest and kissed her. "Who are you all? Are you people that I've heard that you are all people I've heard so much about?" asked Marjorie as politely as she knew. "Yes, we are people out of the Mother Goose and Father Goose books you think so much of." And all the funny people and animal answered in the chorus. "Aren't you glad to be acquainted with us?" "Oh, yes, yes, please don't go," cried Marjorie, delighted as they formed in procession, just as the boys and girls do at a dance school when it's time for the grand march, and went hippity-hoppity, leaping and jumping and barking and crowing and dancing and shouting and talking and playing and waving their hands, throwing kisses and cutting all sorts of queer capers over the foot of the bed. "Dear me, I hope they'll all come back and sing that song about Mr. Jinks again," Marjorie sighed happily. "I do wish Mr. Jinks could come over again. I do like Mr. Jinks, and oh yes, and Mother Goose too, and the little old woman who lived in a shoe, and Tom, the piper's son, and the funny boy with his hair cut so queerly, and then somehow or another, although Marjorie perfectly sure she didn't dream a word of it, it was morning." That was The Strange Tale of Nursery Folk, which originally appeared in The Strange Tale of Nursery Folk. The original publishing is not known, but it's circa 1899 and was reprinted in the Baum Bugle in autumn 1963.